Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meet civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Bernie ISD trustee and owner of the Bernie Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Bernie City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros. Ready, aim, ceasefire.
Good morning, Kendall County. This is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And this is Ceasefire. And today we are heading back to the Bill of Rights. And we're going to talk about the 7th Amendment.
Yeah, it's only been a year since we did the 6th Amendment.
It's been a while. And an interesting thing I noticed was that of the amendments, 4 of them relate to judicial issues. We always think about rights, but the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th are all just about judicial processes and stuff, and just shows how important it is that those are kept in line.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating too, and I think we talked about this recently on our show, in our Constitution, the legislative branch in its original form took up something, I don't remember, like 60% of the written word, and had 10 sections. The executive branch had 4, and the judicial portion had 3 sections. And there wasn't a whole lot said about it. Historically, when all of that was taking place, you had 2 factions. You didn't have Republicans and Democrats. You had Federalists and Anti-Federalists. And the Anti-Federalists were freaking out about the judicial branch. They wanted more verbiage. They wanted more rules. And that's what really inspired the 7th Amendment. Keep in mind, we just came out of a Revolutionary War. We got rid of a tyrant king. And so it's like, okay, that branch... I think it was Hamilton said it's the least dangerous branch, and these Anti-Federalists were going to make sure it was going to be the least dangerous branch.
Yeah.
I think it's probably, of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights, it's probably, I wouldn't say the most overlooked, but I think it doesn't.
Pretty close, yeah.
It's there in the top 3, right? It's not getting its due.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about it, the 7th Amendment addresses jury trials and gives us a right to the jury trial. Judge Cahoon told us one time that of all the jury trials in the world, like 93% are done in America. It amazes me because you think of jury trials. Oh, yeah, you go to trial, you can have a jury. That's normal. That's just the way things are done. No, it's not. In the world, it is not. And there's been other countries that have had them and gotten rid of them. But the U.S. is really the only place that has consistent jury trials all up and down the spectrum, everywhere.
I remember that conversation with her. I was fascinated by that, and I was looking up the history of, well, how did we even get to jury trials? And it starts in the Magna Carta. And so that's when we get, it states that no man can be imprisoned without the lawful judgment of his peers. And that becomes a part of English common law and becomes a tradition in the colonies as well. But today, it's not commonplace in England anymore.
Right.
That is the birthplace of trial by jury, and it's not commonplace anymore.
Yeah.
Right? That's where we get it from, and it's disappearing there very rapidly.
Yeah. I read about a case in India. India used to have trial by jury because current government structure was set up when the British ruled it. And they had trial by jury, and now they don't, for the most part. And it came about because there was a man, a prominent person, who committed a horrible crime, killed somebody, and it was atrocious and all that stuff. And the jury found him innocent. And everybody was all appalled by that. And so they said, well, we can't trust the people anymore. And so they got rid of him. They got rid of the jury trials. And it just shows that you have to be careful about populism and wanting to make sure everybody pays the price of their crimes, because you could end up disrupting an entire system that way. And that's what happened there. And that's one reason why I think it's wonderful that these are in the amendments in the Bill of Rights rather than just a law.
Yeah.
Right? Because we can't change that very easily.
I may be remembering incorrectly, but wasn't it the case that after the OJ Simpson trial, where they found him not guilty, that they interviewed some of the jury members, and they said that they thought he was guilty, but they weren't going to not prosecute him, but to find him guilty. because he was black.
Yeah.
And that, I think, brings out a good question. Our founding fathers were scared of the government trying people and, doing the verdict and everything. And now we're at a point where people are afraid of the people.
Not that much. Who's afraid of the people? I mean, take the OJ Simpson case. So whether he's guilty or not, I don't know if he's guilty, but maybe he was.
Mm-hmm.
Him getting off, how many people did that actually hurt? The families, definitely. They're devastated. They didn't get the justice that they deserved. But did it hurt anybody else? And it hurt our society, maybe undermined our trust in the judicial system a little bit. But if we had gotten rid of jury trials because of that, I think that would impact a lot more people across the country in a negative way. Because I think jury trials, for the most part, protect the people from the government more than they mess up.
Well, and I think I get where you're going with that, because one of the questions I was going to ask is, so who do we trust least, right? Is it the government or is it 12 people?
Right.
Like, who would you rather have your fate with? If your fate hung in the balance, who do you trust more?
Right.
And I'll take the trial by peers over the judge any day of the week.
Likewise. Yeah.
And I like Cahoon, and I think she likes me, but
and I think she's fair.
And I do too.
But once you eliminate the trial by peers, then you have control by a set group, and there's just too much opportunity for mischievous behavior, in my opinion. There is an area in America where we are losing the right to a jury, and that is with the advent of the administrative courts. So like within all the various administrative departments, they have their own court system.
Yeah.
And that is an issue. And in my opinion, that is a problem. And I think some people are pushing back against that. But I think with the number of cases that we have going on in our country, there are always going to be a place for this sort of private, closed doors kind of justice.
Yeah. So there's a case, and this is surprising. I had to go look this up. I, in my mind, thought that this case was decided a long time ago, and it's actually only in 1987, a Supreme Court case, Tull versus United States, Tull. And it's the developer was, I forget what he was doing, but he was discharging some dirty water or something like that, and he got in trouble. And what this case is about is who gets to try you, right? Who gets to decide if you're guilty or liable in his case, and who gets to assess the civil penalties. And this Supreme Court case said that, yes, it's the jury that will decide your liability, whether or not you're guilty, but the judge gets to decide your penalty. And that wasn't really finalized until 1987. And that always shocks me. Like, well, I'm right out of high school in 1987. I always thought that every time we do a show and I go into looking up these Supreme Court cases, I don't know why I think this happened like 1,000 years ago. And it's like, oh no, I was a high schooler or post-high schooler. So that's intriguing too. And because that's not written into the Constitution, it's not written into the Bill of Rights. It's, this is just something the Supreme Court somehow found in the text somewhere, or made it up.
They
out
decided.
Of whole They decided that this is who's going to get to decide the penalties.
Yeah.
I didn't read enough into that to figure out how they determined that, and I'm always curious how today's court, which is obviously very conservative leaning, how they would reinterpret that, if they would at all.
I bet they would go the same way, because the Seventh Amendment does not discuss anything about punishments. Now, the Eighth Amendment, I think, does. Isn't that the excessive punishment or something like that? Yeah, cruel and unusual punishment. So I think they'd probably come out the same way, because the Seventh Amendment only addresses who decides the verdict, right? And so the defendant has a right to a jury, but it doesn't say that the defendant has a right to be punished by the jury. That's still under a different jurisdiction. So I think they'd probably find it the same way.
So one of the things that I find interesting about this is that it ties into the whole idea of self-governance.
Yes.
Right? So instead of letting the government decide your fate, you and your fellow citizens are deciding your fate or somebody else's fate.
Yeah.
So it really ties in beautifully with the entire setup of our government, how it's structured, that sort of Republican democracy that we have,
Right.
giving more voice to the people in judicial matters instead of letting the government set and establish the verdicts.
Right. We're going to take a quick break here. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron, and we'll come back with that in just a moment. Bernie has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Bernie Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Bernie Bookshop. We pride ourselves on finding what you're looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Bernie Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Bernie at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Bernie Bookshop. Welcome back to Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. We'll get right back to it. We were talking about jury trials and the Seventh Amendment, and we're talking about how that brings the people into the judicial system, and which is very much a part of our country as far as the people having a say in all different branches. And this is how the people get involved in the judicial system. And I found it interesting that this only applies, this jury requirement, to the first level of the courts. But then the second section of the Seventh Amendment says that nothing decided by the jury can be changed by a higher court. So we have appellate courts, we have the Supreme Court. And my question was, well, why aren't there juries on the Supreme Court? And so I went and looked, and it's because the jury's decision cannot be overturned. So when you appeal something beyond a jury trial, they can appeal based on the process, or somebody was prevented from presenting certain evidence by the judge or something like that. You can question that, but you cannot appeal just the decision of the jury. And I think that's interesting. It sort of locks it in there and says that that can't be changed. Now, you can appeal it on all kinds of other stuff, and they do. They always do. But you have to find some way that you're not appealing the jury, which is, I thought was interesting.
So maybe the prosecutor withheld evidence or something like that. So,
right. Or the judge suppressed something, or even the whole system is bad. You know, you can even say that, but you can't appeal the actual jury verdict.
So we're putting a lot of weight on that jury verdict.
Yes. Yes.
And so this reminds me of something that, when I was doing my research, Tocqueville was writing in the 1830s about, or he's arguing basically that juries are a kind of civic school for citizens. Now, he said it more eloquently than I just did, but in that process, they learn about judgment, self-government, and the importance of something we talk a lot about on this show, which is the engagement in our civics, being a participant in our government. And I thought, well, that's fascinating, because we talk about it, like I said, on the show quite a bit. And whenever we give examples of that, how that plays out, we talk about, well, go to a school board meeting, go to a city council meeting, participate in your HOA. I never thought about trial by jury or jury duty. I mean, I see it as a duty and we should do it, but I never thought about that as a form of civic engagement. And I didn't think about juries, as I just described them, as a process that we're educated and participating in our government and having control over the judicial branch of our government.
Yeah. Well, have you ever done jury duty with Judge Cahoon?
I never get picked.
I got picked once. I didn't actually get picked. I reported in and went through the whole spiel, but I didn't get picked in the end. But she spends a lot of time discussing the process. And even the two lawyers will talk about the process and the importance of different ways of looking at what's going on. And it definitely was a civic education. It was great.
Yeah.
It was really awesome. I recommend it for everybody, actually.
Oh, well, that would be great. Would you recommend my name to Judge Cahoon? Because
I'll bump you up the list.
I can't even get a letter in the mail, like an invitation. That's all I want. My wife got one just a few months back, and I sent a picture to Cahoon. I snapped a photo, sent it to the judge, and I'm like, hey, come on, like my wife's not doing a show on civic engagement.
Well, you know what it is? We talked about this the other week, is you're just too tall. The chairs don't fit tall people, so.
Oh, that's what it is. I bet they have cruel chairs in there. This is sour grapes now. Yeah, I don't want to sit in there anyway. They don't want me. Honestly, I mean, come on, Kathy, like, really? I mean, like, short women.
Kathy's a very fair person. Everybody knows she'd judge based on the laws.
Oh, yeah, she throws shoes at me at home.
See, I rest my case.
She's going to call me a liar.
An interesting thing that's come out of the Seventh Amendment that is still under heavy dispute is something called jury nullification.
Yeah.
And it's not actually in the Seventh Amendment, but the way the Seventh Amendment is worded and what it requires leads to that. So since a jury their verdict can't be changed by a higher appeals court, that effectively gives that jury a say in whether that law is valid. Because a jury could, even if they thought that the guy did it, whatever the crime was, they disagreed with that being a crime, the jury can always say, we're going to find him not guilty, and that's just our decision. Now, that's very rare, and it's hard to get 12 people to agree to that kind of concept. But it has happened. And actually, Hamilton did it at the very beginning. He had a case where somebody had been accused of slander, and he said, this is wrong because it's actually true.
Mm-hmm.
And currently we think, okay, so it's not slander if it's true. But back then the law was you can't say a bad thing about somebody even if it's true. And so this client was charged, and Hamilton was trying to say, look, it's true what he said. But the judge wouldn't let him present it that way. And so he presented to the jury, he says, hey, you can find them innocent, even though he did say those things or printed them. I can't remember which one it was. Because the law is bad, that people should be allowed to say what is true. And so they did. They acquitted the guy. And basically that started the process of changing the laws of slander and libel to be, it has to be something that's false. It can't be something that's true. And so they nullified that law effectively. And so that's also a really powerful way for the populace to change things within government, even laws.
Right.
It's not done very often, and it's one of those things that you've got to be very careful if you think you're actually going to want to push for that.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting concept.
So that goes back to, what we were talking about earlier about the citizen participation in the judicial branch. And of course, I like to talk about the 3 C's, which are the pillars of this show, which civics, civic engagement, and civility. And right there, I think we've demonstrated the civics aspect of it, and we've demonstrated the civic engagement part, your participation in jury duty. I want to tie into the civility part now, because what jury duty does is it puts you in a room with 11 other people of various backgrounds. I mean, it's supposed to be a jury of some person's peers, right? But those peers could be black, white, straight,
right,
gay, rich, poor.
Right. And I just want to interrupt there on the word peers. I think a lot of people have quibbles with it and say, oh, well, that person's not my peer, so I shouldn't be judged by them. I think the word peer is being used as a human, as an adult human, and that's basically the only qualifier for being a peer of somebody. And I think some people get lost with wanting to be judged by people that are like them.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because in the trial that we just saw in Dallas, the murder of Austin Metcalf and
right, another student stabbed him.
Carmelo Anthony, I think.
Yeah.
His parents argued after the verdict that there wasn't a black person on the jury, and in fact they said it was all white, and
it wasn't.
It wasn't. I mean, I think there were 2 Asians and I forget how many Hispanic people, 3 I think. But like we were talking about last week, that somehow they're white now, and those groups are white.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. People think that peers, like for me, does that mean that if I were on trial, that the 12 people there that were judging me would have to be 57-year-old Latino men who live in Regent Park. I don't know. I would actually I wouldn't mind that, or maybe my dog. I want a jury of 12 Chiweenies judging me, because I'll get off.
Okay,
but yeah. So going back to the civility aspect, there are 12 people in this room deciding your fate, of various backgrounds, various religious denominations, and they have to interact with one another. They have to listen. This is not going off to Facebook and getting into your social media silo and determining the fate of somebody based on whether or not you agree with them.
Yeah.
You have the facts that you have to deal with, and you have to build consensus among 11 other people.
Right. Very different people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was the classic movie, The 12 Angry Men, was about that, was about these people that were so different, had different outlooks and different opinions and different ways of judging facts. And yet they were required to get through and somehow find consensus. And they did in the end. And there's a modern version of the movie. I can't remember what it's called, but
it's the same with
same title?
Jack Lemmon. The one that came out in like 20, 30 years ago when Jack was still alive.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's a great version. Tony Danza, and I forget who else is in there. But I like that's one of my favorites.
Okay.
And there's another actor in there that was in the Hunt for Red October. Anyway, that's great show. What is this show about?
Yeah, I can't remember.
But yeah, so it's really fascinating, because I was worried. There's a reason I took a year to come to the show, because I thought, what the heck are we going to talk about? And then I started doing the deep dive into it, and I'm like, wow, there's really a lot more into this amendment than I realized. And there's really a great opportunity for civic engagement and knowledge in this. And I think a lot of foresight with the framers, getting the citizens involved in the judicial branch, I think is brilliant.
Yeah, and it sets us apart from the rest of the world. No other country runs themselves this way, their judicial system this way. They always want experts and smart people. And it's very different here, and I think it's a good thing. I think it makes it more chaotic, but it's definitely a good thing for free people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a system too where, like, especially on the state level, where we elect judges, and so sometimes judges are appointed and some states are elected.
I'm always back and forth on that.
Right.
I'm not totally committed to elected, but
I'm not either, but the appointment process seems like it could be very partisan.
Yes.
And so having that safety net of jury sort of assuages those fears a bit.
It does. It definitely does. I'm going to bring out a book real quick, and this doesn't actually have anything to do with the Seventh Amendment, but it is about sort of our founders. It's called The Pursuit of Happiness by Jeffrey Rosen. It's how classical writers on virtue inspired the lives of the founders and defined America. Our founders read a lot of Greek, Roman, early English law, things like that, and this talks about where they got their inspiration from and where a lot of our things that we think of as American social and governmental structures, where they got that inspiration from. And it's a neat book, and we've got it at the Burning Bookshop.
Awesome.
And
so closing thought.
Okay.
Imagine you, or maybe one of your kids, does something to your neighbor's property and they cause severe damage, and your neighbor takes you to court. Do you want your trial to be conducted by somebody who is elected or a appointed judge? And let's say that your neighbor's well connected in the political process. He's either helping judges get elected or he's appointing those judges, right? Yeah. So who would you rather have? The judge deciding your fate, or 12 of your neighbors? And I think that brings everything into context.
Yeah. I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Great way to put it. With that, we're going to wrap it up. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. And if you missed any of this, you can always go to BurningRadio.com, listen to our podcast or any of their other great podcasts, and we will see you next week.